Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Just want to call the meeting to order. This is the Beach Advisory Committee meeting for March 18th at 6 o'clock. We have 4 members here present and at least 1 on Zoom and potentially
we got follow-up.
2 more that are going to be joining. So that's kind of where we are on that front. So I know we have guests here, so I wanted to just start quickly. We circulated the minutes, and I just wanted to know if anybody had any thoughts, comments, suggestions, or a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Great. So we're going to move on. We have guests. Galen, do you want to introduce the guests, since you know more about the connection and everything, whatever?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Galen Weidley. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the town of Kennebunkport. I would like to thank Paul for inviting me here tonight. He extended an invitation, especially in light of the storms that we've had of recent, to help with an education process for what to do when you have to repair beach stairs or dune restoration. And there was some rulemaking that changed in the department as well. So I thought what better way than to bring 2 experts from the state DEP that are here today. Phoebe and Alex are joining us. And so I'm going to turn the presentation over to them to help explain the NERPA review process. And then if there's any questions about the building permit process, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Super. Thanks so much for getting this arranged for us.
All right.
I'll turn the floor over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. Just going to move this mic a little closer. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes? Okay, awesome. I'm Phoebe Scott. I'm a project manager in the Southern Maine branch of the Department of Environmental Protection in the Land Bureau. And yeah, today we're just going to kind of talk through what it is that we do, what we review, what we permit, what we have jurisdiction over, and then we'll kind of get into some more beach-specific regulations and some latest updates to a lot of our rules that are designed to help kind of help everyone deal with the very substantial storm damage that we've seen in the past few months. So just to get things started, I just kind of wanted to do a very brief overview of what it is we do at the Land Bureau. So at the Land Bureau, we're responsible for the review and licensing of various land development activities, specifically those that affect protected natural resources like coastal sand dune systems, coastal wetlands, significant wildlife habitats, fragile mountain areas, freshwater wetlands, great ponds, and rivers, streams, and brooks. When you need a permit from us, you'll be doing an activity that would be located in, on, or over any protected natural resource. Or anything located adjacent to a protected natural resource, including a coastal wetland or a sand dune system. So our definition of activity includes dredging, bulldozing, removing or displacing soil, sand, vegetation, or other materials. It also includes draining, dewatering, and filling, which includes adding sand and other materials to sand dune systems. And also just any construction, repair, or alteration of any permanent structure, such as a house or a shed. Activities, so there are a few different types of permits that we offer based on the level of impact that your project may have on a resource. Activities that are less impactful to these protected natural resources qualify for a permit by rule, which is a shorter review period of 14 days after which the applicant can start work unless they hear from the department. And doing so, the applicant assumes all responsibility that they're following all applicable rules and regulations during and after construction. Some examples of these activities permissible under PBR would include repair and replacement of structures in kind for frontal and back dune areas, and also most new construction in back dunes, and some limited construction, kind of case by case in frontal dunes, which Alex can talk a little bit more about. These PBR applications are generally easier to put together and require less time between submission and receiving your permit. However, if your proposed project will have significant impacts to a protected natural resource, you will need to apply for an individual permit. There are other permit types that you might see on our website, including Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, but these only apply to freshwater wetlands, so would not be applicable in a beach system. Some example of individual permit projects in a sand dune system would include changing the design or a location of a seawall, path replacement or relocation not in a V zone, buildings in frontal dunes, and some limited new construction in V zones, but that's also very case by case. The type of permit you may need, as I kind of already mentioned really depends on whether your property or your parcel is located in the front or the back dune, which I think Alex can also say a little bit more about as well. She's a little more of an expert in the sand dune rules, but basically front dune standards are a lot more strict. There's a lot more protection involved because that's a very fragile ecosystem in those areas. Not that back dunes aren't, but we try to protect front dunes as much as possible. And yeah, that's kind of just like a very wide view of what we do. I know that was pretty quick, but I just wanted to give a very brief overview of the things that we're looking at and the things that would be under our jurisdiction. And then I'm going to pass it over to Alex to kind of talk about some newer rule changes that have happened in the past few months. Thanks.
Hello. Yeah, so we've had some recent rule changes to the Natural Resource Protection Act. When talking about sand dunes, options for stabilizing the shoreline were even more limited than they used to be. We don't allow for new hard structures in sand dunes in general, so no new seawalls or riprap. And instead, we have been trying to expand the opportunities for dune restoration and construction. A recent rule change now allows for biodegradable materials to be incorporated into those designs. That was passed at the beginning of February under the emergency provision, so it's in effect for 90 days, during which we're hoping it will be passed permanently. And so that's kind of our biggest change when talking about, protecting shorelines in the sand dunes. We still don't allow for, new hardened structures. We do have some opportunities for replacement, but we really are trying to provide more resources and ease for these dune constructions and beach nourishment projects, which can use, dredge materials in some cases, as well as upland sources of sand and gravel. But those, get developed site by site, and we can talk more if you guys have specific questions about that. I'm happy to answer that. And then we also recently, as of last week, have a new kind of rule that offers new exemptions under the Natural Resource Protection Act, including things like raising up your pier to be above like a certain flood elevation. We saw a lot of piers get damaged in the last storm because they were too low for what the sea levels are. We can go through that more if you guys have specific questions. It's a long list, which we can definitely provide handouts for and link on our website as well. Is there anything specific that you guys had questions about, or any kind of certain activities within, I assume this is mostly sand dunes because we're talking about Goose Rocks Beach. Yeah.
Could you describe the beach nourishment, the 16-A?
Yeah. Yeah, so that we had pretty recently added a new section to the permit by rule, 16A, which allowed for dune nourishment and restoration projects. New changes will now allow you to use dredge materials, as well as to do it more than once a year. And so that's a permit by rule, which has that 14-day review period that Phoebe mentioned. The design has to be approved by the Maine Geological Survey before submitting, and they are so helpful and will work very closely with either a homeowner, a contractor, a consultant, whoever you're working with, to provide resources for what a good design could be that will match kind of the natural coastal sand dune. Like we mentioned earlier, you can't put up a seawall under this provision, but you can bring in sand or, in some cases, gravel, as well as with beach plantings. And we are also allowing for multiple homeowners to apply under one permit. We really see these things work so much better when it is multiple properties rather than just one property do it. And so we're allowing multiple homeowners to apply under one permit by rule, with that 14-day review period. Yes. Yeah?
Can you repair a seawall that has been damaged by a storm?
Can you come up and identify yourself and then ask your question, please, or can we pass that microphone?
Wait, I can repeat that, Steve.
Okay.
I can repeat that for you. Goose Rocks has, as you might know, has kind of an interesting mixture The east arc is largely the sand dune front before you get to the public road. But through the central and most of the west arc, it has been armored for decades, 70 years plus, with granite seawalls that are on individuals' properties. So this storm, as you know, came through. It's moved a number of rocks, even the very heavy ones. It's also a special interest to me. Several of the folks had built access paths to the sea by having notches in the wall and then building cement or stone steps. And those turned out to be total focusing mechanisms for the waves. And they need to be filled. So what is the process that a homeowner would need to do to get permission to replace a rock that may have been moved? That'd be one thought. To be able to fill those gaps by just adding a rock into what is a notch in a wall, or add a little more material to that wall so that when the next storm comes, they've got more material. Can you think of another option? Those are three I see. Let's start with those three. What could
Yeah.
or would they need to do that?
Is it always individual ownership? For instance, the seawall in front of my house is partly the town and the Conservation Trust.
Well, that's something that would need to be determined, but let's start with the individual at that step. Yeah. So again, the question is what can be done, not who can do it, but what can be done by rule. Yeah.
Yes, so if the damage is to less than 50% of the structure, you can do a repair and maintenance, which is exempt from the department's rules. If it's more than 50% of the structure, you can replace it in kind under the permit by rule, section 4, which is the replacement of structure, and section 16, which is the coastal sand dune section. But that can't be expanded or, built higher or larger under a permit by rule. It's, for a replacement in kind. We don't have rules that currently allow for a seawall to be built higher or to be expanded in its current location. We do have an avenue for modifying the seawall or the riprap revetment in a different location under a full sand dune permit. And in those instances, it has to be determined that the new design is less impactful than the current one by Maine Geological Survey as well as Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. And so in most cases, those have to be either shifted back, or if it was a seawall, we would prefer to see something like usually a riprap revetment that's at a shallower slope, so it will dissipate wave energy better. So basically, if you're repairing, in kind, we don't need to know about it mostly. Please don't make it higher. We do find out about it, and then it gets messy. And then if you have to replace it, if it's that damaged, it's a permit by rule. And then if you'd like to do something significantly different, raise it up, make it larger, put it in a different location, then you're looking at a full sand dune permit. Does that answer your
Makes sense.
question?
Yeah, no.
We got, Paul's got his hand raised.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, thanks. If two adjacent owners wanted to, who had, severe losses on their pathways, if they wanted to combine their pathways, which is what, Maine Geologic would recommend, could that be done with a permit by rule, or that would require, because it's a change, that would require a full permit?
It does depend a little bit. If it's going to be on developed area, let's just say it's already a lawn or something like that, then it can be done under a permit by rule. But if it is going to require, cutting into native dune vegetation and things like that, it will be a full sand dune permit. This is something we're looking at. We want to make it easier for people to combine their pathways for the Maine Geological Survey has mentioned. it provides, less avenues for the water to come up onto people's properties. So that is something that we're looking at to allow that to be an easier process. But currently, if it is going to be, in native dune vegetation, it will be a full sand dune permit. But if it's in a developed area, it will be just a permit by rule.
Thank you. And I kind of a follow-up. Many people they might have small stone walls, but in front of them, they might have had 30, 40 yards of dunes, frontal dunes, rear dunes, dune grass, other vegetation that was wiped out. And there are deep, deep cuts, mostly where paths were, but some where there were no paths. And so I'm just wondering, for those homeowners, what would your recommendations be?
For establishing a new path, is that what you're asking?
No, just they've lost 30 yards, 40 yards of dunes, and a lot of vegetation, probably a lot of invasive species too. So there they are with the instead of the dune, the front of the dune being 40 yards from their lawn, say, it's now 5 yards. So in terms of restoration, what kind of suggestions would you have for those folks?
To contact Maine Geological Survey. They will be the most helpful with providing, specific design information. It does vary, you see the differences from one end of the beach to the other, and they're trying to mimic the natural system that was there, and so they'll have the best information for that. They're a great contact. Most often, they recommend, bringing sand up to a certain height that will mimic like a natural dune crest, as well as installing dune vegetation, those plantings that you see, to establish and stabilize that sand. And that would be a permit by rule, section 16A. It's pretty straightforward, quick review period. We all love it.
Yeah, good. I think it's, if you wanted to comment on how the two arms of government work together, that might be helpful to folks. Your role versus their role, Maine Geological Survey.
Yeah, so the Department of Environmental Protection is the regulatory agency. Maine Geological Survey, they get to be the fun scientists who run around and look at beaches and sometimes take us on field trips. But so they have the best research and field information that what can help to design and recommend kind of site-specific information. And we're just making sure that it complies with our rules and regulations.
Thanks. I would note that we have 26 people online, so some of them may also have questions.
Are there any other questions in the audience here, and then we'll go to the online?
Yeah, in terms of...
Can you just identify yourself, and then we're happy to hear what you have to say.
Hi, William Van Benthuysen, 23 Winter Harbor Road. So for the areas where folks want to restore the sand in front of their properties, who monitors the material that is used to infill those areas? How is that monitored and quality maintained in terms of what's put back in place?
Yeah, so part of the design that MGS is looking at, Maine Geological Survey, is sand that will match the beach materials. That is also a requirement in the permit by rule. You can't bring in some random sand. And they are very helpful with providing that site-specific sand recommendation. They might also have recommendations on suppliers. I know it's been hard to get materials right now because a lot of people are doing this. They might have more recommendations. Unfortunately, we can't recommend anything.
Yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit later in the meeting about a project that the Conservation Trust is doing on their property at the beach. And in talking to the Maine Geologic Survey, Goose Rock's beach sand is really rather unique, as I think we all know. So there really isn't a commercial source that would match it. And therefore, what we are doing through the permission by the permit by rule is we are mechanically moving the sand from below the high tide line up onto the dune area. So we're doing what nature would take many years to do. Our concern is that we may not have that amount of time, so we're kind of jump-starting it and moving the sand from, again, below the high tide line, but above the mid-high tide, and just 6 inches deep, but wide enough that we can get enough sand to be able to restore that dune. And I really believe at Goose Rocks, that's about our only option. The wonderful thing is that we have a plethora of sand. The reason our sand is so unique is it never leaves our bay. It's been there for longer than all of us, for sure. And therefore, it's unique property, but also there's lots of it. And it can be moved, as long as it's moved carefully and not too deep, it can be moved around.
Can they bring sand back out of the rivers?
It's not to say you couldn't, I just don't think at this point you would need to. Yeah.
And that was a change that was implemented under the emergency action in February. It used to only be upland sources of sand and gravel were allowed, but now we do allow for things like beach scraping, and when there are dredges occurring, dredge materials can be placed, if suitable. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Rob Dwyer at 958 Kings Highway /1 Edgewood Avenue. Now, Edgewood Avenue opening to the beach this year got slammed. I mean, rocks were tossed around like marbles. They were huge rocks. And the opening prior, 2 people hip to hip could get through. And now you could run a Mack truck through this space that's opened up with a lot of dune erosion on both sides. I've always recommended, rather than have a straight line, beeline to the beach, to do a Z. In other words, so you build back the dunes, but your entrance is angled, so it protects in a way from the sea. What kind of process is involved to do that kind of change?
So yeah, it's similar to the pathways. It would be, if it's in developed area, a permit by rule. It sounds like if it's done with, that dune restoration component, it would be a permit by rule. If you're cutting a new path through natural dune vegetation, it would be a full sand dune permit. And yes, we've heard those same recommendations from Maine Geological Survey that you're talking about. Yeah. They really recommend not having a straight path right up from the beach to the upland. They see a lot more success with that zigzagging because it doesn't, act as a chute for water and doesn't worsen erosion in the same way.
So just to be clear, excuse me, just to be clear, if someone were in the process of restoring a dune, bringing in the sand, in our case, scraping up sand, but not cutting any existing vegetation, just creating a new dune, that dune could have an angled path. There would be certainly nothing. They already had a permit by rule to do the work. There'd be no issue in creating that at an angle.
I don't believe so. I think that we would allow for that. It doesn't explicitly say it, and I will follow up, but
I think it's entirely too logical.
Trust me, I agree with you.
Okay, good.
I would
Thank you.
I would prefer it that way, and I will follow up because I think that would work very well.
So if the residual dunes that's there, and it was a straight line entry to the beach, in order to create that curved or Z path, you'd have to cut into the dunes on each side, and that brings us up to the next permit level. Is that correct?
Yes,
That's
yes. This is something that we are discussing because we are seeing that it's harder to do the better thing in some
Because
cases.
there's a sand dump. I mean, I've owned the house for 45, 46 years. And I can't tell you how many times I've raked sand off the lawn. And January 13th was a major haul, and it's still there. It has to be blown away. And it's just getting annoying. And there was a surge on the 11th of March that they had changed the rocks and sort of put them in a straight line, which helped a bit, but it still threw a lot of sand down. So it's a continual problem for that entrance. Thank you.
Hi, I live at Goose Rocks. My name's Bill Yunker. There is a problem when you try and zigzag when you have right of ways are usually confined to a specific right of way. It's a legal thing, so you have something called boundaries that, I think Edgewood is unique because it's got Conservation Trust on one side and town on the other.
Town on
So
the
there,
other.
there should be no problem with zigzagging a path there. Some of the other ones will probably be more problematic. I'm glad we're just hauling sand up from below the high water mark. That's a great way to do it. I would like to comment that I walk the beach almost every day, and the sand dune, it's already filled in a foot just from the wind blowing it at the bottom of the dune cuts. So it's, nature works quickly when given the chance. So, but I'm glad we're doing something. I think the town and the Conservation Trust combined on quite a few of those lots along there. So we maybe have the opportunity to do some real work there. I don't know. Except it's probably expensive.
Okay, can we look and see if there are questions
Oh, yeah, you got some.
online?
Yeah, hold on. Don Gallant?
Okay, John, can you unmute yourself and identify yourself?
I think I'm unmuted, yes.
Okay, yeah, we can
We
hear
can
you.
hear you,
Can you hear
John.
me?
Yes.
Okay, so my concern to the wonderful young ladies that are showing up, very courageous with your Kevlar vests on, no doubt. So, the younger woman on the left of the screen mentioned the seawall height. I don't see anywhere in any aspect of the CIS part of the town screen where the seawall height is measured, which is the first point. The second point is that every remedy that we try to take locally is done privately with absolutely no help from the town. Thirdly, as you all know in this audience, anybody who owns an ocean-facing piece of property has been through this litigious accident of the last 12 or 15 years, which has been incredibly punitive to anybody who owns beachfront property. So I would like to see some measures from the two young ladies that show up from the state, from the EPA, that says that the community, meaning Kennebunkport and the state of Maine, are going to show up and finally take some responsibility for those beachfront owners and even those back beach owners who have suffered huge punitive and financial damages, so that the town and the state can be party to some of that. Is there any remedy to that? Or are we all just sole proprietors and the state is going to take their hide out of our skin and the town of Kennebunkport is just going to walk away from this whole thing?
So within our bureau, we are administering the rules and regulations that are currently in place and approved. We are not landowners in this case. The land, we don't own any of the land.
We're not saying we own the land. We're saying you're
Right,
telling us to be responsible. And I don't mean to be overspeaking for other people in the audience or online. You're telling us to be responsible for everything. And yet you do almost nothing. I'm asking you to participate in helping us to remedy the situation. Because if those of us that own anything near Kings Highway, if Goose Rocks is gone, you don't have jobs.
Thank you very much for that input.
I would just like to say, our role is to administer the rules and the regulations that are currently in place. Any changes that you'd like to see, I would suggest contacting your legislator. That would be the best route.
Okay, thank you. Who's next?
That was it on the Zoom.
Oh, okay. All right, we have another question in the audience here.
I missed the beginning, so I don't know if this was covered. Is there any?
Can you identify yourself?
I'm sorry, Rob Wengel, 873 Kings Highway.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any emergency funds that came in from the storm that are available for homeowners? That's question one. And the second question is there anything being done about the marsh? We've talked very much about beachfront, but the marsh suffered maybe even worse, and the people along the marsh were flooded, and that it was the convergence of the marsh coming one way and the ocean channeling it through all the public paths that made it so devastating.
Do you know of any grant state funds available to help individuals? I don't know of any, but. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll speak in the mic.
Yeah.
I am not aware of any state funding that has become available. I have heard that FEMA funds are potentially available for homeowners, but I think that only applies to the December storms as of right now, and the January storm damage is currently under review for approval for FEMA funds. I'm not an expert on that because that's totally not, my purview, but I have heard that FEMA is probably providing money for homeowners that experience storm damage. But yeah, nothing on the state level, unfortunately. I wish there was.
So on that FEMA issue, what you need to be sure, and obviously this is maybe a little late, but you need to document. Take pictures, anything you could think of writing, write it down. Because the FEMA requirements to be able to qualify for those dollars are ridiculous. Well, they are very strict. Yeah,
The other question about the marsh. Is there any discussion of the marsh?
We don't have anything, nothing has changed because of the situation with the marsh in terms of our rules. We still do allow for buildings to be raised as an exemption. You don't need a permit to raise. If you have a full foundation and you're raising your building to meet the certain kind of requirements in our rules, that doesn't require a permit. We still don't, have anything specific in terms of, I guess, like stopping the marsh from migrating. There's nothing much, that our rules talk about with that. Do you have a specific activity or anything? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, well, that's not true. That's not true, because you require permits for everything.
Yes, I'm asking, so what type of activity?
So if you have to raise a home, you have to go through the permitting process. So that's disingenuous at best.
So under the department's rules in Chapter 355, it is considered a de minimis activity if you are raising your home to meet the requirements in Chapter 355. That specifically is having the lowest structural component of the house to be 3 feet above kind of the surrounding area, which will allow for wind and water to flow through a post and piling foundation. And you do not need a permit from the department for that activity.
Hey, Galen.
I'm not an environmental expert in any way, but we talk about dunes and other things on the beach side that can prevent future damage. I don't know if there's anyone if anyone's investigated anything that can help prevent things in the future on the marsh side.
Yeah, I don't know of anything specifically other than trying to build a dike, and that would take a lot of neighbors getting together. And that's something I know that, there's some discussion, Sampson Cove area in Cape Porpoise, there are a number of people that are facing this exact question of how can we hold back the water, because it is increasingly coming.
This is a community challenge, not an individual challenge.
It is a community challenge, and communities are made up of individuals, and that's the, yeah.
Paul, did you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I did. Just a question on the raising the house question. While the state considers it a de minimis activity, there would obviously be local building permit, et cetera, that you would need to get, maybe even a site plan. And so my question is, say the house is already 33 feet high and the basement flooded, and maybe you want to put it up on pilings. Is the town going to help out in that? Is there any activity to allow people to go higher?
That's
even if they're
certainly,
current?
that's certainly something, Paul, that is going to be part of the review, that we're looking forward to really as a town, and looking at what climate impacts are going to have on our local ordinances. And that's one that's certainly been brought up. And yes, we will be moving forward on that sort of thing. I can't tell you how it's going to end up, but definitely those are going to be looked at.
And
Galen, did you have a
I do have an
comment?
update for you all on that. First, thank you for DEP for providing an overview of the NERPA process. I do have handouts tonight also for the for any kind of permit by rule application, especially if you're repairing beach stairs or something that's already been existing. There's a nice step-by-step guide to help individuals with filling which permit through the department. And you can also apply for your building permit while you apply for your permit by rule at the same time. We're just not going to issue your permit until the 14 days are up, or they issue the go-ahead. So I have those handouts for you. And then I also wanted to share that LD 1809 changed the state law for zoning when it comes to base flood elevation. So under the state law, the municipality, regardless of our height restrictions, have to allow for 3 feet above the base flood elevation. So that's already in law. So I already got our town solicitor's opinion on that. So even though we haven't updated our ordinance, which it will be updated, we have to allow 3 feet above the base flood elevation. That's a
So
state
but
statute.
that's 3 feet minimum.
That's
So
the state.
if your land is shaded, then the 3 feet minimum, if your land is graded and sloping downwards, then 3 feet minimum is the standard. Is that correct?
It's based off where the base flood elevation is, and that goes above that. So you'd go 30 feet above that, where that base flood elevation is.
So in essence, it's adding another 3 feet to
Right.
what has been the 30 feet above base in the ordinance.
Correct. And then that's also going to tie into our floodplain maps updates as well. So you stay tuned to that. Those new maps are going to be arriving in the town offices any day now, so that you can see where your base flood elevation is in the new updated maps.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, wait, Steve, did you have another question? Yeah.
Rob Dwyer again, 958 Kings Highway. Has the town applied for any repair to the seawall at Goose Rocks overall? Anything else under the rules that the EPA is talking about?
We have not at this point, given that they haven't made a final determination on the storm, FEMA. So there's nothing to apply for at this point.
What is the application? I mean, what is the FEMA delay involved?
They have to do an assessment on the damage and determine if this was a qualifying event. So that's above my pay grade. I'm not sure all the qualifying factors for that. But yeah, they haven't made a determination on that storm.
Yeah.
In the December storm they did. They made a determination that there are eligibility for that, and you can apply for damage during that storm.
Okay, I would imagine certainly the January storm would apply as well.
Yeah, either a town or an individual can apply for FEMA relief, FEMA support from the December storm. And they're looking now to see whether a town or an individual can apply for relief from the January storm.
So we're waiting for that.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can't stress enough with FEMA, especially with their scoring criteria, they do want to see a community effort, especially on the local level, that there's collaboration amongst all parties involved. It helps score your project higher. So definitely, I can't stress that enough to start having those conversations now as a local community on that.
Who should that get reported to if people have individual things? Does that go to the town hall, or like, how does the town collect all that information? Does it go to FEMA?
I'm not sure how that, yeah.
Hi, Lori Smith, Town Manager. So how that gets reported is through the state MEMA office.
Okay.
And through federal representatives once that application's complete. So right now, we're still waiting for a declaration. We've been told the last few weeks it would come. I was told in a meeting today that it'll come this week. So we're waiting, and then that application process begins.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. All right, any other comments? Okay, all right. thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it, and it was
Really great.
really nice to have you here.
Thanks so much.
You must be super busy, so we
Yeah.
appreciate your
Yeah,
time.
let you know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. If we go back to our, on the agenda, I think the next item is public comments for items not on the agenda. I don't know if anybody has anything they want to raise at this point in that area. Are there any public comments on anything that's not on the agenda? Please,
Yes, yes. Right, it's back on the podium.
sorry. You're so-
We got to make you walk now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rob Wengel again. Do you just advise on the beach or the whole community? Because we have a massive problem related to this and unrelated with our streets and our roads all caving in. So is the
This- you want-
paying,
you wanna address that?
We're really-
organizing ourselves instead of individually but collectively to get much needed road repair? Is that on something we advise the select people of?
John, you want to take that?
Yeah, as you might know, this committee was formed as a spin-off or a condition of the beach use agreement or the beach ordinance. And our responsibilities are defined, and I know I have them memorized, and I probably should, but it does tend to be more beach-centric. And it's how, and interactions with the beach certainly can come about. But when it comes to, and parking is obviously a piece of it, but when it comes to structures that are off the beach, roads and other type of mechanisms, that's something that would be outside the purview of this specific committee. That would be a good step. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Or to, yeah.
Are there any other comments in the audience?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move on to committee reports. I think the first one is public safety. I don't know if you have anything, Barry, on that topic?
Well, the only item that I'm going to raise is just pursuant to the storms, in that the west end, as we know, was flooded. There was no access for 5 days. People were very, very concerned for their safety. Police weren't coming down. People couldn't get out. It was a mess. So it's just something that I think we've got to follow up with in terms of, hopefully, it'll be a long time before the next one, and it probably doesn't follow as much under the purview of our beach user agreement. But the idea being that, public safety is critical, and there were approximately 30 people that couldn't get out for 5 days, and making sure that we have the proper equipment, making sure that the communications. I know the Patriots Day storm, I was actually here for as well, and the police had come to the homes before and after the storm. There was access, and just checking on people. Are you okay? Is everyone okay? How many people are here, et cetera? And there were a lot of people of those 30 who were furious, to say the least. So there was a lot of ill will, and I just think communication could have really helped, and of course having the proper equipment. So on behalf of a lot of the people that were there, I'm just sort of repeating their concerns, just so that people know.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and as you know, this storm was a little more than what was predicted, but so as far as the pre-warning, and to that end, that's the first time in my certain time here that we've had that kind of water, combination of the the height of the tides, where the sea has come, and the combination of the wind. The town, I think, did an incredible job of supporting the activities of trying to remove that water. In fact, we darn near destroyed an old truck trying to pump it. The good news is that the town has received an anonymous gift of $80,000 to purchase now I don't know what it's called, a trash pump? Is that what it's called? Yeah. So it is the type of equipment that you're speaking of that would be required to be able to drain that area were it to occur again. So I certainly feel the pain of the folks that were trapped in it, but I hope they don't feel that the town wasn't trying to do everything they could in the time and the event to support them and be there for them.
No, that's great news about the pump, so, very nice.
Thank you.
Okay, natural resources, Paul?
So a couple of items. John is going to discuss the beach project a little more. I just wanted to say we are going to have a beach cleanup on April 20th, which is a little earlier this year because of the amount of trash on the beach. We're going to meet at 9 o'clock at the general store. We'll be sending out some promotion on that. So if you're far away and want to come up for that weekend, that would be great. We'll probably need a little more help than usual. It's possible we could be planting some grass that day too, but that's there are a lot of variables in that we can't commit to that. Who's playing with the screen?
Yeah, you're still
Oh.
on. You're still on, Paul.
It's better now.
Okay. Thanks. Hey, Fred.
Yeah. Hi, Fred.
Hi.
Am I up, Paul?
You can either talk about it now or later. I see it was on the agenda down below. I thought we were going to talk about it here.
No,
You've already started, so.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, we'll talk about it here. We're just we'll see if we can get the PowerPoint. Yeah, we're just going to see if we can get it
Okay,
up.
sorry.
If not, I'll just wave my hands. But the pictures are pretty. But if we're able to bring it up, what I'd just like to share with you is what the Kennebunkport Conservation Trust is doing under a permit by rule. This is the 16A that was just spoken about, where they are allowed to, I'm going to say I've got my trust hat on. I'm a trustee of the board, so I was working with the trust on putting together this permit. There we are. There we were. So the trust owns a number of properties. Here we are along Kings Highway. You can see the line of properties. There are two lots. There's a private lot, the Roberts lot, you see in kind of a flesh color, says private. The town has a lot, which is down on the southeast corner of the stretch. And then the town has the three right-of-ways, the one at Broadway, the one at Proctor, and the one at Edgewood. So this is the next slide, please. So here is the working area that the trust is working in. This image, this graphic is over a drone image. Since late 21, for the trust, I have been collecting drone imagery over Goose Rocks Beach, over this area and the West End, and creating these image maps. And if we go to the next slide, this is the dune area. You can see the date in the lower right in September of 2023. So at the end of last summer. The next slide, please. And what I've done here, just quickly outline what is the kind of the vegetated part of the dune. The dense part of the dune is there in the orange polygon. And then in purple, that's extended seaward. That's still part of the active dune. It's the young dune, probably less than a foot between the back and the front, but a lot of vegetation, as you can see. It's all lying in there. So the next slide. This is after the January 13th storm. This was collected 2 days after. And if you can you toggle back and forth between the two of them for me? Just kind of bounce it and bounce it and bounce it and bounce it. Keep that up for me. The polygons are the same, so they're not moving, as you can see. So you can see how much dune was lost, not just the front dune, but also chewing back into the veg. And I draw your attention to the pathways. If you could go back, keep it up for me. Keep going back and forth for me. Okie doke. Now go back one more. There you go. So look at the path. See that long, narrow path coming down Broadway? Look what happened. Huh? Check it out on Proctor as well, so you can see how deadly those paths through the dune are. Just opening them right up. So thanks. Now let's go ahead one more. So this is the area in blue that we're proposing to replace. And you can see that it's landward of where the young vegetation was, right? That's between the blue and the purple. That was that young piece of dune. There's a lot of root structure still there. So the hope is that that's going to be able to come back. And then the next slide, please. Let's go one more if that's the next one. Okie doke. So here's the idea, is that we're going to scrape. Now, these were drawn individually for each lot in order to honor the permit by rule, but we'll basically be taking the sand. The yellow bottom line is about mid-tide. This was taken at closer to high tide when the drone went over, but that's about mid-tide. So we'll be slicing up 6 inches deep, and when the dozer gets to the top of those yellow spheres, it's going to pick up its blade. So it won't chew those roots, God willing. It'll just push the sand beyond them, and then we'll fill in. The next slide hopefully has the ridge line. Let's do one more. Yeah. So this dashed line is kind of where we're going to break between filling the dune in the back and sloping it down in the front. So the next slide, please. This little purple line that's going to show up, that's going to be a cross section. So basically we're going to slice it and then look at it sideways. The next slide. And that's kind of the shape of the dune. So the back part would fill up to the height of the dune, and then we'll slope down to meet where that new grass is going to hopefully come back, or the old grass is going to come back. And then the next slide. Now this is, again, seeing how vulnerable those slices were through the dune. What Peter Slavinsky, the marine geologist at Maine Geologic, what he suggested is that we do not carve paths at Broadway and at Proctor, but rather fill those in straight across. Just make it solid. We'll have steps that will go up, and then a mat will go over the dune to get folks down to the beach. We need the ADA access at Edgewood. So currently, that's going to need to stay at grade. But we are looking at the possibility of blocking that off. We need a different permit, because in order to have the ADA, you've got to have a slope for folks to get up that wooden ramp, and then a slope to come down. And that takes a large structure, which, as the gals were saying, that's a permanent structure if it's there more than 6 weeks, and it needs a different type of permit.
Well, we're not going to get the permit.
That permit, it's going to be next year before we're going to get that permit.
But we're applying for it.
We will be. We have not started yet, but that's what the intent is to be able to get that closed off, because I appreciate that's a bear. And we have these issues going all up the beach with the large openings. It's all right. Well, that was but we need to do something, and we need to figure out what it is. Here, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's got to be a flyover to get to the beach. You know, at Dyke Road, at several of the entrances down the west end, those again, the stone walls are private property. Those need to be, the homeowners need to be able to get together, get the permit, and get those closed. And that's where we are, and that's what we need to do.
And that's not true at Edgewood, because you've got Conservation Trust and town ownership on both sides.
There is Conservation Trust in town on both sides. That we can, that if the trust so chose to do it, they could fill that. And I think they would. I think that's a reasonable thing to do, to get that piece closed.
John, you have another question back there.
Yeah.
I think you answered my question, but I'll make it clear. Where you're closing off the rights of ways, you're going to be closing the wall off, but putting access in over the dunes.
Drapes over the dune.
Yep.
Which is the recommended
Yep.
approach for it.
Yep.
And it's going to be interesting to say
So
the
the
least.
handicap accessible one, if we went up to a walkway over the dunes, would take a pretty big ramp pretty
It
good
would,
ramp.
exactly.
You'd probably lose a couple of those handicap spots, so.
But it's gonna take a ramp, yes, you
Yeah,
probably would.
that long, yeah.
And that, yeah, and then coming down, it's gotta be at an angle. It can't come straight down the dune like the others can. But fortunately, it's town property, so we can, if the town agreed, and I think that I'd put my other hat in, I think we would, but that would be a sloping, path, a mat.
Might be easier
Let's get it down.
at Jeffrey's Way or New Bedford Road to do that. I mean,
Yeah,
or,
but Jeffrey's Way is an access point. That's, we need to have that for emergency beach access.
I understand that, but when big storms, when big storms are coming, we should be closing it off. It'd be less work to do that than cleaning up afterwards.
Certainly something to consider, yeah.
So you're gonna build a seawall?
No, it's gonna be a mound of sand. There's no rock being moved. Yeah.
In either entrance? So in Broadway and Proctor, you're not gonna close off the wall?
I certainly would, it would not be our immediate intent to do that, but it will be properly handled. It will have a good amount of sand in front of it.
So you'd be going up, when you came down Broadway, up to the level of the sand at the top of the dune?
Correct,
And you'd walk along a mat?
correct.
And then you'd have a ramp?
And then the mat would
would
gently
slope down.
slope down. Yeah, that's the intent. It's a work in progress, but that's the intent.
Do those mats stay out year-round, or are they sometimes
No,
get pulled?
no, they get pulled up, and hopefully, we probably have to pull them before a major storm was coming the same way. Yeah, yeah. But hopefully, they're gonna be relatively easy to roll. They're structured. Yes,
Assuming the
And John?
weather is reasonable and holds out, what's the lifetime for this program to take effect?
well,
The
it's,
dune, I'm really talking the dune restoration.
the dune restoration piece, we hope to start the work next Monday. It'll be done quickly, so that within the end of in 2 weeks, it ought to be finished. How long it will last depends on Mother Nature.
How long before, given that we don't have major storms, how long would the expectation be that it fully grows in again?
Oh, if we don't have major storms, Paul's going to be talking about a planting. We plan to plant it. In fact, the permit by rule requires that we reseed, that we replant seagrass on this fresh dune. So the hope is that nature will give us the time to be able to have that dune establish itself. I also have a bridge in Brooklyn I've been trying to sell. So it depends on where we're
We could
gonna.
move it here.
Yeah, it depends on where we're gonna be. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Would you plant anything besides dune grass?
that's an interesting thought. That's something to ask Paul. Yeah,
So Carol?
You know, there used
Yeah.
to be tons of Rosa rugosa,
yes,
and then a group of concerned citizens with secondary homes showed up one day, and they were tearing out all the Rosa rugosa. And I said, what's this all about? They said, because they're invasive species.
yeah.
I said, have you considered you're the invasive species? But now my wife tells me Rosa rugosa is not considered an invasive.
Have they changed it? I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Can I talk?
Well, so what does it
And
help
so
hold the beach down?
The roots of that would hold.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'll tell you what's also good is that bittersweet. Yeah, that is an invasive species, but darn, does it have roots?
Rosa rugosa would work in there,
Yeah.
too, like it had before.
Yeah.
Paul, did you want to say something?
Yeah, a couple of things.
Okay.
So the Maine Geological Survey on replanting, as John mentioned, we have to.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of What's Your Story? Tonight we are sitting down with Tom Massiso, who works for the school district, and a whole lot more. We don't know a whole lot about you, Tom, so we are so thrilled to have you sit in the hot seat tonight and just get to know you a little bit better. So we usually start by asking our guests where you grew up, how you got here. So take it away.
First of all, I'm very, very thrilled to be here myself, too. I really have been looking forward to this. I grew up in Portland.
99 people would look at what is allowed and you wouldn't know the difference. From an invasive species point of view, it doesn't have the seeds that are spread widely by the birds.
Right.
And that's why it's considered invasive and no longer allowed to be sold in Maine, as in many other states. But there's another kind that you can plant. But the problem is it's super expensive to plant a bush versus
You gotta buy a full
grass.
bush. Yeah.
So our proposal, the trust is obviously contributing financial resources to do the scraping, and our proposal to the committee to take out a beach fund would be two things. One, John has done a calculations. It may not turn out to be this much, depending upon what actually gets scraped, but 11,000 plugs are necessary to fill this area in. And as John mentioned, this would be in that area from the blue line toward the dunes. It's in the area that it wouldn't be out front where you can see that there is roots still there, but what behind that, because it cut away so deeply, there are no roots in that area, and that's why the state requires replanting.
It's the blue polygon, Paul. I'm just telling folks it's the blue polygon that we're seeing on our screen.
Yep. So in addition to replanting, we would need to buy mats. I was happy to hear the DEP people tell us that because there was so much cut back at Edgewood, I think we would be allowed to put in diagonal paths, and you can buy these. You can buy the mats, the Moby mats, in various shapes and configurations. So we could put in curved there and elsewhere, which is great news. As long as we're not, as I heard her say, as long as we're not disturbing, we're not cutting into established plant area. So we don't have a price on we do have a price on the grass, which is $11,000. It's $1 a seedling. But we don't have the price on the mats because we don't know exactly what the configuration will be. If this gets done in the next 2 weeks, then we'll be able to go out there and measure and figure out what we need. One thing that John didn't mention, we're hoping that the plovers do not arrive early, because you can't use mechanical equipment if they're in the neighborhood. So we have to work closely with a third government agency, which is Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. And they monitor the site, and they have a review process as well, and they'll send spotters out to see whether there's any activity. Carol usually coordinates with them, and Carol will know from them what's happening. But there's a process. There's a process that we have to go through to make sure we can do the work. So it could be we're all ready, we have our permit by rule, but the plovers land straight in front of Edgewood, and we can't do anything there, which could mean we could be working up in Broadway, but not down in Edgewood. So that's a caveat to this.
So Paul, do you want to make a motion to approve the expenditure of those funds, or what do you need on that front?
Yeah, I was going to make the motion, but first I wanted to hear if there were questions or comments or concerns.
Any comments in the audience here? Any comments online, questions?
With the screen up, I can't see.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you can take the screen down.
Take the screen down,
Yeah,
that makes
yeah,
it easier
yeah.
to figure out what's going on.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to add a comment. I think we last spring actually made a motion to buy grass, but it turned out we got a grant. The Conservation Commission worked with the town and got a grant, and there was leftover material. So we were able to use it at Edgewood and Proctor last year to do a small amount of replanting in an area that was damaged. This year there is $3,000 left over from that grant, and the Conservation Commission is contributing that to this project. So the $11,000 is reduced by 3, which is 8, and but we need like another $500. We're going to have to do a lot of staking this year, so we may need to buy more stakes than we have had to use in the past. I wanted to say one comment on the staking. It's going to be a little more challenging when we go out and do that. It's going to be easy where there's a new dune put up, but we may be putting stakes where people are saying, well, you're taking the beach away from us. But the practice and the recommendation is from the state is you look at the vegetative edge and you plant your stakes and your twine there. We are very lucky because of all of John's work that we actually have measurements and we know where the dunes were last year. It's not guesswork. So John's contributions have been incredible in this.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you.
So,
That's a lot of work.
John, you gonna
so
Pardon?
you're gonna put anything underneath the sand where we've lost a lot of dune grass? Like the core products or anything like that?
No, we're not.
Seaweed,
So
Christmas trees?
seaweed will get mixed in, but no, there's no plan to do that at this point.
Okay, so Paul, do you want to make a motion on what you were asking for here?
sure. So I'll make a motion that we recommend to the Board of Selectmen that we expend $8,500 from the beach fund in this year's current budget for this project. Again, I think we already made this recommendation but didn't use the money, but I think it's a good idea to make it again and get approval for this. It's a much different project than we were considering last year.
Exactly. Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for all your work, Fred and John. It's really nice.
Yeah.
I know it was a lot of
Good stuff.
compressed time frame.
You do, you do.
Fred, communications, what do you have to share with us?
Well, I was going to give a rundown on the beach mat request for Bartlett, but John said because he has all the information, he's there in person, he will do it. So
Okay.
beyond that, I have nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, in response to a citizen who brought forward a concern about trying to improve handicap access to the beach, the request was made if we could look at the Bartlett entrance. There's a town right away that comes off of Bartlett. It's raised. It goes past several lawns, several private property lawns, and then there's a walk down over the seawall itself. So the town went out and looked at the area. In order to make it ADA compliant, we would have to cut into the vegetation that's on the dune and in the right-of-way, which would require something beyond a permit by rule. And that's a real complicating factor. And also then you have the issue of the rather awkward and steep granite steps that go down. They're all different lengths and sizes down to the beach. So what the town is suggesting is that we as a committee, that the Beach Advisory Committee, take a look at the overall question of handicap access to the beach. And part of that now would indeed be the Edgewood entrance. That is, as you know, we have 2 spots allocated. The Edgewood entrance, I believe, has 2 parking places, and then there's a parking place at Jeffrey's Way. So this is something that I think we need to have. I would suggest that a group get together, much as we did for the garbage question, and take a look at what we would recommend the town do. We're aging. I resemble that comment, and we need to be looking at what's a beach-wide solution to allowing folks access to the beach. And Bartlett can be a piece of that. Dyke Road can be a piece, although, boy, I don't know if folks have gone down. The town did a great job after the January storms of moving out the rocks and filling back in the sand, pushing the sand back over it. Totally washed away again with just this last high tide. It's impassable for a vehicle.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a problem that needs to be addressed.
Okay, well, you know what, so let's maybe just, if people want to let me know who wants to work on that, and we'll get that organized. Sorry, Fred, did you have something else?
Yeah, I do. On Bartlett, one of the things we could possibly do there, I'm hoping we could do, is what makes it difficult to walk on is the fact that on the plus side, you get this really solid old grass that's there and didn't seem to be moved at all during the storms. However, what makes it difficult to walk on is there's this very deep groove of sand that kind of zigzags through the middle. Is there any reason we couldn't just fill in that groove with beach sand so that's level? I think that would go a great way to helping people with disabilities. You know, it's not going to be ADA compliant by any means, but for people that are a little unstable on their feet, if we could make that level by just filling that groove in with sand, I think that could be a good short-term solution possibly.
I bet we could.
You have Heather online,
Okay,
I,
all right.
yeah, I don't think that would require, I mean, what did we hear today? If you're replacing, that got washed out, I'll say it got deepened by the storm. Maybe that's something we could just do as a group, just
Not
wheelbarrows.
changing it, you're just trying to,
Yeah, wheelbarrows and, I mean, you just fill in, just filling it in so it's level with the grass,
The way it was.
the way it was. So I don't know, we probably ought to have somebody who knows more about it than I make a decision, but,
you want to figure out who that is?
I'd help.
Okay. You and Fred want to get together on that one?
Tell you what, Fred, let's get together on that one.
Okay, is there someone
Okay.
else? Heather? Can you identify yourself?
Hi, this is Heather Larrabee. I live at 6 Bartlett. And I wanted to comment on that, the safety of that path. And like Fred had mentioned, it is really unsafe with the wear pattern in the middle. And also after the storms, we have those granite stairs or concrete stairs, and it washed away a big crater between the stairs and the path. And I know someone has come along and tried to fill that in with sand, but another storm will make that again unsafe for anybody to walk on. But as Fred had pointed out, because of the grass that has been growing and we have a couple of trees there, rather than just filling that in with sand, is there a way to fill that in with loam and grass to make it more of a sturdier path that will withstand some of the storms? So I guess that's something to consider. I mean, filling it in with wheelbarrows of sand, I think somebody has been trying to do that, but it also gets worn away very quickly. The grass seems to be
You need to
sturdier.
anchor it, yeah. Well, you and Fred can work on that one.
I guess
I'd like that.
that's something we'll look at. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a rule against removing vegetation. I don't know of any rule about putting stuff down.
Yeah,
I don't know. We have to look
I
at
think
it.
it needs an anchor. Okay, thank you, Heather. Was there anybody else out there?
No, that's it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks. I'm sorry, did you have another comment?
Yeah.
Yep, come on up.
Just be careful if we fix Bartlett to make it easier that we don't create more of a channel for flooding. So there might be an unintended consequence. So just be really careful however we plan that. It definitely needs to be improved, but in the storm, it channeled like never before.
Like a river, yeah.
On Bartlett as well.
Yeah, Bartlett
Yeah,
was.
because it's got that opening in the wall, that's the thing.
Right, so just whatever we do to correct, which it probably does need to be correct, just we need to also make sure there's no unintended consequence
Yeah,
of
okay.
creating a bigger flooding channel,
Okay.
which
yeah,
the Larrabees got ocean water like they've never had before right down the street.
Yeah.
Yep, okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just gonna move on to a couple of the other old business things that we have. One is the beachside numbers on the houses, which Carol has been a champion of.
Oh, yeah, failure.
No, we gotta stick with it.
Yeah, I am. We sent out a letter last year asking oceanfront property owners if they would put their house numbers, not only on, that they have on the street side, but if they'd put them on the ocean side, so that first responders, if they had a bad accident or serious accident, like we had Stu Flavin died in front of our house, so they could get to that house, because when the vision from the street, And the vision from the beach is totally different, and people get on the beach, they don't know where they are. And I thought that would be a simple request, and the town doesn't want people to think that it is a requirement, because it is not. It is just a request. So I sent out a letter. We have 3 houses that have numbers up. My house, our son's house, and Chaz Cow's house. And that's all we got. So I thought, well, let's check and make sure that the police and the fire department really think it's a good idea. So we went around again and asked, and yes, they think it would be a very good idea for safety. And so we're going to try again. And the comments last time were that we wrote a too nice letter, and it didn't come from enough important people. So my effort this time is going to be like I do when things get approved. I write it, then I give it to Fred. And then Fred rewrites it completely, changes everything, and then I say that's perfect. But this time, I would like to have the fire chief sign it. And I thought maybe other groups like community group, Goose Rocks Beach Community Group, so it's not just a thought. I mean, it really is a serious safety issue. When we had the kayakers that got in trouble last year, you know, and nighttime, and nobody knew where to go or what to, it was very frightening. So go ahead, straighten me out.
I just wanted to clarify that after you talked to me and I talked to Chief Everett, we crafted a letter, and he is sending out a letter.
Perfect, that's better.
That's great.
That's
Perfect.
a better
Thanks
idea.
a lot, Lori.
Thank you, Laura.
That's a great, there's, Fred, you're saved.
Okay, do you want to come up and identify yourself? Sorry.
Good.
Just a question about your house numbers. My name is Brenda. I don't live at Goose Rocks Beach, but I work there. Would it be acceptable to have them on the beach stairs so they're visible, or must they be on the house structure?
Well, I don't. It was, we tried to pick up one spot so that they would be similar on each houses. And now some houses you'll never see the numbers. On our house, the numbers are very obvious. We put them on the left side, we did 6 inches. We put them under a light, so at nighttime, you know, a light would come on. Since the stairs get washed out almost every year, I'm thinking that maybe we keep them on the houses, but that's just a thought.
Something's better than nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other
And
side.
that's right also. Having some numbers is better than having no numbers at all. So that's the goal.
There are no numbers at the public entrances. There's no indication of where you are there.
Exactly.
So that would be something the town could do.
Yeah, I almost think you want like entrance A, entrance B, like not a number, but if you go through and.
Bartlett entrance.
Yeah, but if you're from out of town, you just, I walked by A, okay, I don't need to remember what street it was or something. So I don't know whether that's something that we could, maybe ask the first responders what would be most helpful. It just seems like it's gotta be something that it's easy for people to remember. I don't know. Bob, do you have any thoughts about that?
No?
Okay. All right, so that will broaden your scope of your project. Okay, the other thing we have is commercial activity on the beach. John, I don't know if you have any update on that you can share with us?
There really isn't. It's moving, it's moving along. It's still being worked, but there's really nothing to report at this point.
Okay, all right, thank you for the update. I think the next one is the trash subcommittee that we've met twice. Pat Souza, Heather Moats, Kate Bauer-Burke, John and I have met, and we've, gone around on it because I think there's not a really simple, easy way to solve that. But I think our recommendation that we wanted to make to the Beach Advisory Committee meeting, and I'm happy to have Pat or others chime in, is really that we think that we should remove the beach front trash cans this year and just rip the Band-Aid off, because it's just too difficult to try and manage a transition, and people don't read and they don't pay attention, but if there's no can, you gotta figure out something else. So that is our recommendation to the committee. I'm happy to entertain comments from the committee or from the audience.
Maybe I'll just put a little bit of background on that as well. As folks know, we'll be moving to an automated trash collection, not this summer at Goose Rocks.
Not this year.
Not this year. The automated,
It will be this year.
I'm sorry,
Not during the summer season.
not during the summer season. This year, the important part of year at Goose Rocks is the summer. So, but the contract actually does begin in September, but because of delays in the truck and Casella getting access to the automated truck that it needs, they believe they will not be ready to pick up November earliest, December, and maybe even into January. So that's kind of where we are.
Now, I had a question when we were talking that one beach advisory committee I can't come to. My house, behind my house, I have a rental cottage with 2 distinct units. And under my understanding, you got 1 trash can for the house. Do you get a second one for separate rental property?
Yes, it's a residence, that's seen as a residence, and it would have, whether it was a short-term rental property or an auxiliary apartment, as long as it's a residence, it'll have 2 trash containers, or 2 containers, 1 for trash and 1 for recycling.
Is that true for if you have two structures?
I would believe so, but I can't, without seeing the details, I don't know.
It was up in the air the last time I brought the issue up, is that, because it would be very difficult to do sharing for trash.
Yeah, I believe that would be the case, but you're gonna have to actually come and look at exactly what the situation is with your properties. But each residence gets 2 containers, 1 for trash and 1 for recycling. So if you have a building that you're renting out that families live in, I would think that it's separate. Yeah.
I would need another trash can and whatever the set is.
Yeah. Again, I cannot answer that for you right now, is that you need to come and really speak to somebody. I would imagine the best thing to do would be to go to the planning folks and just, would that be correct? Could you please help me, Lori?
So right now, we're in the transition of developing every little idiosyncrasy we're gonna come across. And so the best thing to do would be to talk to Chris Simeone, Public Works Director. Yep, and so I think if you have 2 structures, we would probably deliver you 2 items. But a structure is different to you, to me, to him. So we probably wanna look at your exact circumstance.
That's a separate building.
We wanna look at your exact circumstance, so you call us.
So call Chris.
Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot, Lori.
What else is the committee doing?
Thanks, Lori.
We've been struggling with that right now. And I think
Okay.
that's where we are, but we're open to suggestions. Okay.
Yeah, and so.
Hey, John?
Where we were going with that when we do go to automated pickup, which for the summertime would be the summer of '25, then the issue becomes the type of container, how you cannot leave anything beside the containers. So with the automated collection, unlike with the manual, where the folks are off the truck and the gals will pick up stuff and put it in the container, that will not happen anymore. Won't happen at the beach, it won't happen at our residences either. So only thing that will be collected is what is in the container. This has been a real issue at the beach for decades, things being outside the container. The other issue is there's no way to secure the top of the container because it needs to be able to be lifted up and flip open. You can't latch it closed. Animals are going to find this a nice daily treat to be able to get into those containers. And once they're spilled, it's a heck of a mess. And again, they won't be picked up by the automated machine. So what the subcommittee has recommended is that we go to a carry-in, carry-home policy at the beach. And this is something that is currently being done at York Beach very successfully. I spoke with their Director of Public Works. It began during COVID, which was an easier time in the transition. But his comment is that the beach has never been cleaner, that actually had less garbage on the beach, and it's working quite well. And I went on Google for the fun of it. Popham Beach does it this way. Hampton Beach State Park, Portland Head, Fort Willis Park, the Bridgeton Peacock Beach in Richmond, Maine. Some of these are freshwater beaches, I find, because they ain't on the ocean. Fort Forester Beach in Kittery, Higgins Beach, it goes down, it's the way things are going. It is a carry in, carry home policy. It's going to be a change. It ain't going to be popular, but I believe we will see in the long run that it's going to make for a better situation at Goose Rocks, particularly when we go to the automated system.
How do you let people know? Through signage?
There'll be signage. One obvious thing is that there won't be a barrel. So it's going to be, we certainly want to prepare people for that and to let them know that we're moved to a carry-in, carry-out beach. But that's where we'll be.
Joe Smo from X-Town, Virginia, or something comes to vacation at Goose
Yeah.
Rocks. How does he get aware that what he brings in, he brings out?
Because there's no barrel there.
There are no barrels. I mean,
The barrel is gonna say everything?
well, no, but I would hope he wouldn't leave it at the beach. And when he gets to the road, he or she has no place to put it. I'm hoping they don't leave it on the side. I don't think people will. That's been the experience at York.
Okay, that's the experience.
The barrel attracts it. The barrel says, here's something to throw. And if it gets full, and I've done this, you stack it next to the barrel. I mean, there's a barrel there. This is a trash environment. If the barrel's not there, then you've got two options. You litter or you take it home.
Hey, John.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we would need an education campaign along with this. There's a spring newsletter. I don't know what the deadline is, but everyone who's a taxpayer in town, they get a newsletter. We have 400 people on our distribution list. There's Facebook pages. We have to, go through the whole thing
Absolutely.
and promote it.
Wait a second, we have one here and then we'll go. Hold on, we're
Hold
gonna go
that.
right here and then we'll go to Roseanne.
So
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm representing all the text messages I'm getting right now from
Yes,
friends and
indeed.
neighbors, so I don't get up every time just to speak. Rob Wingle again, 873 Kings Highway. I understand it's controversial. The carry in, carry out works well in some places. We have very little litter on our beach, and I really do fear that we're lucky, but it's because there are barrels there. And the bigger deal to me, quite frankly, is we're a dog-friendly beach. We've brought this up before, and we have people who live on the beach who walk dogs. We have people who drive every single day from other parts of town to walk their dogs. And anecdotally, I'd say 85% of people clean up after their dogs. I suspect that that's going to become a bigger problem. And as a dog-friendly beach, I think we'll be stuck with an awful lot of people either not cleaning up after themselves or not having a place to dispose of dog poop. And it feels like we're solving a problem because of the automated trash containers. And I think multiple people in the last meeting about this raised the idea that then hire someone who picks it up manually just for the X number of beach trash cans that exist.
Every day.
Sure.
If you can find some names at a reasonable price that would do that. We've looked, we tried to get someone to do this with the issue when we were going to have to go to Fridays rather than Saturdays for a collection of garbage and recycling at the beach, it was a painful move, but we reached out and could not find anyone that was willing to collect on Saturday, let alone every day of the week.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's picked up, not in the off-season. It's
not just summer, the 10
But it's
10
picked up
weeks.
relatively frequently, even in the off-season.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And the carry-on, carry-off is not going to solve it. I think we're going to end up doing damage to our beach after we work so hard to keep the beach environmentally friendly, as do all of my neighbors who are texting me.
No, thank you. I mean, there's no clear cut. It's a tough one.
as we can and have as many options as we can. And to start this and try it now, we really believe is the best approach to see how it's going to go. Because it's,
And I just wanted to make a comment as someone who walks in these areas all the time. I really resent the fact that people from away bring all this shit from everywhere and dump broken chairs and umbrellas and, you know, all kinds of crap, leave it in our neighborhood. And, you know, and they're just not responsible for themselves. A chair breaks, you bring it home and you get rid of it. Why make it my problem, my neighborhood's problem, or the town's problem?
It's going to be very difficult. And I think lots of people feel like you do. And I think we as human beings take the easy way. If there's a trash can there, we have dogs. I've had dogs all my life. I live at the West End, and we've had trash cans and we haven't had trash cans. Now, if there's a trash can there, will I put my dog's waste in there? You better believe it as I walk by. But would I leave it on the ground? Never. And I take it home. My husband takes it home. We have a little dog trash can of our own. Is it easier to put in a trash can? Did you walk by? Yeah,
And you who live here and are a dedicated volunteer.
I am.
And there are a lot of people who don't live here who
That's why
visit our beach.
I think
walk
there's
their
good,
dogs every day.
without question.
Are we going to monitor the performance once the trash cans are gone down there to see if there's a required plan B?
That's why I think there's going to be a backup, that the committee
Yeah, I
is going to
think
have
that's the
lots of
idea,
backup.
to figure out what's going on this year.
Because it seems
before we're
somebody
up
should
against it.
look to see what the effect.
oh, that's what this provides us. This is going to be
Yeah.
the trial area time. Yep.
Sorry, I have another question over here. Can you identify yourself and then ask your question, please?
My name is Brendan Donovan, live at 876 Kings Highway. Might a super simple solution be to devise a method where people or families come to the beach, you offer them a plastic bag to put their crap in as they leave? And that would be easier for them at that point in time to put it in their car than to think that somebody's gonna collect a whole bunch of stuff and put it in the travel bag or whatever they use to bring the stuff to the beach, and then use it. Maybe just offer people as they come to the beach some plastic bag to put their stuff in, to put in their car when they leave.
Yeah. Yeah, so some kind of a container they could carry home in.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
something to think about. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, let's take a look at that.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. I forget, was it seconded? Yes, okay, so, I think at this time, we'll vote.
Any more discussion?
Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Fred.
I had one more thing. I think the only way, if we're going to go to this, because we have a problem right now with people leaving their dog bags all over the beach to begin with. And I've even had people leave them in my driveway, but that might be a personal comment. But anyway, I think we need to support it with some type of serious fine if people do litter. Not just for the dog stuff, but if they litter at all. And I don't know what the fine is if somebody does litter on the beach or leave their, dog poop bag.
Yeah,
It's got to have some teeth to it. Otherwise, what do they care?
Yeah, it might be a chicken and an egg kind of thing. That might be something that would have to happen if we saw the abuse coming. I'd rather approach it that way. I agree that having it right up front might help prevent it, but I just hate going right to regulations and fines, that's all. I'm not sure that's the best, so.
I have Heather and Chaz, I guess, want to say.
Oh, Chaz should be actually
Chaz,
brought
what
up.
do you want?
You got it on mute, though.
Okay, Chaz, can you unmute and identify yourself, and then we'd like to hear what you have to say.
Are you talking to me? Chaz Cadwell?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry I was only able to log in late. My only comment on this, we live on the West End, and I'm working all summer, this last summer, so I'm seeing lots of people walking dogs by. And coming back from the beach, they all have their dog bags with them. And so I've never seen a bag of dog waste on the beach at our end. So maybe that the general public is different, but the people who are using our end of the beach seem to have good manners.
Okay, all right, who's next? Heather?
Yeah, be on mute, unmute her.
Heather, can you?
Wait a minute. All right, oops. Come on.
Heather, can you unmute or?
There she is.
Yeah. Am I unmuted now? Okay. Yeah, I unmuted and then I was muted
Yeah,
again.
we got you.
So I'm feeling kind of frustrated because it sounds like you have a lot of people making comments from the audience and we're not being heard or validated because you guys have already decided as a committee what you're going to vote. But and maybe I've missed past meetings or something like that, but it sounds like other people are trying to come up with solutions, but you're not hearing us. So that's all I wanted to say, because it wants to be a fair representation of everyone who lives at the beach and uses the beach.
Thank you, Heather.
Okay, are there any more comments out there?
Nope, that's it. Nope, I don't have any, just Heather, and that's it.
Okay.
Well, I think in response to what Heather just said, I think the committee could probably explain all of that did research the trash. Probably, it sounds like they've covered all of these suggestions that have been presented. Is that true?
I believe so, but I don't want to sound defensive, that's all. I mean, yeah, I think so. I don't think I've heard anything that we're just dismissing. I know it's a tough situation. And I am concerned that if the trash barrels aren't there, people might say, okay, I'm not going to pick up that poop because I don't want to carry it home. That, you know, that definitely is going to occur. I hope there can be enough community pressure to have that not be a huge problem.
Anybody read what happened?
Yeah, I just don't want people to think that, you know, all of these suggestions are just being dismissed out of hand,
Comment as to
you
what
know, which they weren't.
That was somebody in Heather's back.
Okay,
I just muted them.
okay. Are there any other discussion or thoughts? Were you at a vote or not?
Yeah, I think we're at a vote. So, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Paul, are you for or against here? Paul, I don't know. what
I'm
you're-
sorry, I had muted. I'm in favor.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Paul mute.
Okay. All right, I think the next thing, just as an announcement, and I think it was mentioned earlier, is April 20th is beach cleanup. We have a dumpster on order. Oh, I'm sorry, Karen.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Your Clover thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And,
Clover request for 2024.
yes.
I apologize.
I would like the committee to consider asking the town to fund for a volunteer plover coordinator again for this year. And if the girl who did it last year could do it, everybody liked her very much. Erin.
Great.
And if there's, I know money's probably a hard subject to ask for, but if her season could be extended longer, especially earlier, I think it would be very helpful. When the plovers start, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have specific dates, or do you want to negotiate that?
Well, I think that's
Just
negotiable.
fund it and then
Yeah,
work on it. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a dollar amount?
I would allow the town to pick the dollar amount.
Well, we could pick a dollar. We need to request a dollar.
A dollar amount?
Yeah.
Do we know what it was last year?
$15 an hour? Is that what it was?
You have to, a whole amount.
You need the whole, yeah.
What, a whole amount?
And not too
Was
much.
it, was it?
either $3,000 or $5,000.
Let's,
I think it was $3,000.
let's ask for, all right. Why don't we say not to exceed $3,500 or something? Would that give you Enough of a cushion to extend it?
Not much.
All right, not to exceed $4,000.
That's fine.
Okay, so you want to make a motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we ask the town of Kennebunkport if, for $4,000 so that they can hire a volunteer shorebird coordinator for Goose Rocks Beach this year.
Okay, I'll second that. Okay, any discussion?
Any discussion?
Paul, people on the, okay, anybody else have any comments, thoughts?
Is that coordinated with Fisheries and Wildlife? I mean, I would hope. Yes.
Can you come up and say so everyone else can hear? I'm sorry to be a pain, but,
My foot's asleep.
okay.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, I'm Bill Yunker. I live down the west end of Goose Rocks. I'm a neighbor of Carol's. And I was just wondering if we're gonna hire a coordinator, if they're obviously working with Fisheries and Wildlife.
They do,
Okay.
and it's worked out pretty well.
And why do we hire them?
We pay for them
Okay.
because Audubon has zero money,
Okay.
zero.
And they really are, they're really important. She provides marvelous service. Yeah,
And they work-
education as
yeah.
well as
And,
monitoring.
and the Audubon educates the CSO's officers, I mean, they work really well together, but really appreciate the town, comes up with the money to, allows them to do it, so it's worked out.
And the town has an obligation under endangered species to, assist and not ignore this problem. So this is one way to provide the education.
Well, town's gone above and beyond, they work very well with the Maine Audubon, and we have a very good working relationship, so.
That's good, thank
Good.
you. John, did you,
That sounds good. I'll second it if it wasn't seconded.
okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to, sorry, I skipped over you the first time. So I think the last thing we wanted to mention is the fact that we have the beach cleanup scheduled for April 20th. We have the dumpster set up, 9 o'clock at the general store, and please bring as many people as you can, because we've got a lot of work between the staking and twining and just general cleanup, so. Our next meeting is April 22nd, and at this point, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to tell you that